Hi everyone, Eric Brook here, Erk Pod with another episode of Erk Pod. Today we're going to have a little bit of a story time about my times in Japan. Absolutely loved Japan as a child growing up. Japan to the average Australian was probably seen as the future. There were bullet trains, there were lots of people. I remember having to do a school project on Japan at one stage. And finally, in 2011, I got to achieve a dream and head off to Japan for what was my second overseas trip. I'd already been to America in 2009 or 2009 even, whichever you prefer. That was my first overseas trip where I took 3 months off work and I drove around in America in a car. Had lots of interesting experiences, met lots of interesting people, and put something like 1,200 miles on a car. Almost got arrested entering Canada. Have some stories, and we'll do a story time about America and my trips there on another occasion. But fast forward from 2009 to 2011. America was the first place that I wanted to go. Being an Australian, influenced heavily usually by America, and because of podcasting, I got to meet and know quite a few American podcasters and podcast listeners. So it seemed like a natural choice for my first time by myself overseas. I travelled extensively alone in Australia. 2009 was my first overseas trip. More stories about America in another episode. 2011, I thought now's a good time to go to Japan. Now, I can't remember exactly when I booked the trip to Japan, but there was an event which I'll talk about in a moment which really affected Japan, obviously. And it also had my mum questioning my sanity because she knew I was going to Japan, but she'd also heard about what they would end up calling the Great Earthquake of Japan in 2011, which, as this news report that I'm about to play shows, caused so much devastation in Japan, and it also killed many, many people, injured many, many more, and there were lots of people that were unaccounted for. So apart from an earthquake, there was also a tsunami, and that also affected a nuclear power plant in Fukushima, north of Tokyo, as we'll discover. This will give you a look at the sort of environment that I thought that I was potentially walking in. My mum said things to me like, "Why are you going? You're mad. Don't you know that they've had a big earthquake? There's not going to be much for you to see because everything will be ruined. You'll turn green because of the radiation from the nuclear power plant that got destroyed. And you probably won't be able to go because they might not let people into the country." That sort of thing she was telling me about. And I thought, first of all, I was going to Tokyo anyway because that's the main place that Australians start, being the capital of Japan. That's the main place Australians start when they visit Japan. And I'm thinking, well, there's no way, even if I wanted to, they would let me go to anywhere near Fukushima that was going to cause me distress or any sort of harm or whatever. And if the situation was that bad, they just wouldn't let people into Japan as well. So now it's been 14 years since the tsunami and the earthquake. This news report from BBC will give us an overview of what the people were dealing with and what I was potentially walking into, not knowing potentially what I would be walking into by the time that I arrived in Tokyo. So for context, the earthquake and tsunami happened in March, and I think I was going there about June, July from memory, in the middle of the Japanese summer. Let's have a look at this report from BBC News and how the news story was broke to viewers on the BBC.
Good evening. Welcome to the BBC News at 6. A huge earthquake has hit Japan, the biggest in its history, triggering a tsunami which has swept several miles inland, washing everything away in its path, causing massive devastation and loss of life. With a magnitude of 8.9, it's the sixth largest quake ever recorded. It's too early to establish a death toll, but it could be in the thousands. An entire passenger train and a ship carrying 100 people are both reported to have been swept away. Fires have broken out in several places, including an oil refinery. A nuclear emergency has been declared after a number of reactors automatically shut down following the quake. The epicenter was some 80 miles off Japan's east coast, off the city of Sendai. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued alerts for 20 countries, covering virtually the entire Pacific coastline, including the United States, the Philippines, Indonesia, Mexico, and Hawaii. The United Nations has said it will do everything and anything it can to help, and search and rescue teams from 45 countries are on standby. Our first report tonight is from Bridget Kendall.
So even if I stop the news report there, you can obviously tell that it's very early on in the earthquake. There's a lot of images coming in, and we'll be seeing some of these images now. And this is what I was potentially walking into in 2011. Now, they do mention Sendai, which is the largest major town near Fukushima to the north of Tokyo. But as we'll see in this initial news report, there were lots of effects in Tokyo as well.
The terrifying moment when it all began. A super earthquake and nowhere to hide. And then an even greater horror. A tsunami that sent a giant wall of water racing towards the coast, tossing cars, boats and buildings like fragile toys. It was exactly 2:46 p.m. local time when the earthquake struck. This was in the local government office in the city of Sendai, close to the epicenter. Papers, furniture, nothing was safe. This was the local air terminal where the ceiling collapsed. As far as hundreds of miles south in Tokyo, offices, homes and shops shook and rocked, leaving some people in tower blocks trapped without escape.
Now they're starting to talk about some of the effects in Tokyo. You can understand being in Sendai and being so close to the epicenter, but as we'll see, it also did affect Tokyo as well. And probably this is some of the stuff that my mum was concerned about in relation to, is there any reason for you to go? Is it just simply too dangerous?
Really started to get quite seriously shaky, and at that point I just thought, I could possibly die now. I mean, this is, I don't know if I can get down the stairs in time to reach the bottom floor. And then they also had my wife screaming down my ear because she was working in one of the buildings in Tokyo.
For those living by the coast, worse was to come. The 23-foot tsunami triggered by the quake reached the shore with terrifying speed. Boats broke away from moorings, splintering as though made of matchsticks. Whole buildings collapsed into the water. These images from Japanese TV show the terrible power of the water, sweeping away whole shipping containers and crushing buildings like tin cans. One entire ship carrying dozens of dock workers was simply swept away. Here in Miyako, the entire port was submerged. Cars and vans and even houses were swept up in the swirling current, one building here on fire. And further inland, the black wall of water continued its relentless onslaught over fields. Thick with debris, it absorbed everything in its path. Many abandoned homes were left half underwater. Not everyone managed to get away. In Tokyo, the tremors also caused havoc at the Parliament building. The Prime Minister went on television to brief the nation.
It was a very strong earthquake. And in the Tohoku region, mainly and over a wide area, damage has been inflicted. I offer my deepest sympathy to the people who have suffered the disaster.
And a further cause for alarm, damage to infrastructure. This oil refinery east of Tokyo caught fire as a result of the quake and then exploded to rage out of control. The flames billowed over 100 feet into the air, blazing like a fireball for hours. There were also, worryingly, incidents at 2 nuclear plants. They shut down automatically when the tremors began, but a small blaze started in the turbine hall of one, and the cooling system failed in the other. Local residents were evacuated as a precaution. Transport links in the region hit by the disaster were also affected. In some places, roads buckled or cracked wide open, leaving gaping holes. Other coastal roads were swept away, or motorists found themselves stranded on bypasses, watching the swirling muddy water below, littered with debris, smashing into the embankment. And the airport in Sendai was completely submerged. The water crept up the runway. Passengers took refuge on the roof of the terminal building. In Tokyo, thousands of commuters were stranded when rail and road links ground to a halt. The BBC's Tokyo correspondent, Roland Burke, witnessed their desperation.
Just look at this, a huge line stretching down into the distance, people waiting to catch a bus. There are thousands of people, millions of people on the streets of Tokyo tonight. All trains have been suspended. The official advice, if you're safe, is to stay where you are. But after the shock of this afternoon's earthquake, many people just want to get home.
So just talking about the transport situation there in Tokyo, as I mentioned with the epicenter in Sendai, it really did affect the Tokyo area as well, as can be seen by those images. And the fact that this has happened, there would have been live TV coverage, because this is obviously not a live news report, but there would have been live TV coverage in Japan. They're well experienced with earthquakes over there compared to, say, how we are in Australia. And it just reminds me, the other day, as I'm recording this about a week ago, there was a small earthquake that I felt in the early hours of the morning here in Newcastle, in Australia, with the epicenter being 80 or so kilometres away in the Hunter Valley, in the Upper Hunter. And to me, it just felt like when I was sitting down that they had one person on one side of me, one person on the other, just pushing me side to side as if I was on a Manly ferry, for instance. But what you see on those images of the transport situation, and what I saw of the Japanese people when I was there, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, even though they've just seen a massive disaster, these are initial reports, and then things would become clearer over the coming days, and there'd be aftershocks and that sort of thing. You see how calm the people were at the bus stations, at the train stations, knowing that they couldn't get home, or they couldn't really go anywhere, but they were there. They weren't panicking, they weren't screaming. Sure, there were people panicking and screaming, as we saw in the early part of the report, but when it came down to, for instance, the transport situation, some hours had passed by that stage, but still they were just waiting there patiently, as if they thought, well, we're here now, we can't really do anything. We'll just wait patiently, and hopefully the authorities will assess things and we'll be able to go home soon. You know, there was no screaming, yelling, rioting, abusing people that I've seen in situations that have been way less worse than what this situation is. But then again, that tells me and shows me, which is something I already knew, but this trip really did enforce it, just the politeness of the Japanese society.
As nighttime fell, fires were still breaking out in the places that bore the brunt of the disaster. Rescue teams reported they'd found hundreds dead in Sendai and more bodies in other places. Many people are still missing. Aftershocks have continued. On this day of catastrophe, the scale has been so immense, it's hard to absorb it all. Bridget Kendall, BBC News.
Well, we heard from our Tokyo correspondent Roland Burke in Bridget Kendall's piece there. We can go to him live now in Tokyo. Roland, we've seen some terrible images there in Bridget's piece, the devastation in Japan. What's the latest?
I think what we're getting is thousands of troops and the police and the fire brigades fan out across this broad stretch of coastline that's been devastated. Is little glimpses, pictures of what's happening in very local areas that can give us an idea of what's happening in the wider area. In one ward of Sendai City, a single small ward, 300 bodies have been found. Outside that city in the Miyagi prefecture, a huge fire is raging across many kilometres in a built-up area. In another town, 300 houses were engulfed by a wall of water that was at rooftop height. At the moment, the official death toll is 350, with another 500 or so missing. But I think when first light comes and the full scale can be seen, that toll is bound to rise.
Okay, Roland Burke in Tokyo, thank you. Well, today's earthquake may be the worst Japan has experienced since records began, but the country has a long history of battling with the forces of nature. Our science correspondent David Shukman is here to explain. David.
Fiona, thank you. This was the largest earthquake ever to hit Japan and one of the most powerful ever recorded anywhere in the world. To give you a sense of scale, the explosive energy released was 8,000 times greater than in the recent earthquake at Christchurch in New Zealand, and the effects are still emerging. In the distance, a first terrifying sight of the huge wave surging inland. Literally nothing can stop it. Houses are just crushed. First came the earthquake, now the tsunami. This is a double disaster, and even the large building in the foreground is destroyed in an instant. According to this official, the waves did not decrease in size, they kept coming, and the cycle lasted for about an hour. Japan is all too familiar with earthquakes. Each of these dots marks a quake of magnitude 7 or more since 1900. And here's the site of today's quake, the country's worst on record. Now, this is the reason. The fault lines that run nearby. They divide some highly active tectonic plates, with the Pacific plate moving westwards. As it goes, it's being forced down. And a sudden jolt triggers the tsunami, lifting the ocean floor and the great mass of seawater above it.
The fault has broken along a line hundreds of kilometres long, tens of kilometres wide, and all that amount of land has suddenly moved by several metres. That's an enormous amount of movement. It's an enormous amount of energy.
The waves surging across the Pacific led to a full alert. Dozens of countries feared they'd be devastated. But as each hour has passed and the tsunami has reached further, there have been no reports of damage beyond Japan, so far.
And due to the tsunami, there's been many people who went missing.
There have been lucky escapes. This fishing vessel somehow survived the waves. And there have been some very disturbing sights. A giant whirlpool and a small boat caught inside it. Now, the tsunami is still on its way to the shores of South America. The authorities there are urging people to move inland or at least be aware of the risk. But it's clear that Japan has borne the brunt of this catastrophe and its impact is still unfolding. Fiona.
David, thank you. Well, we'll have more from Japan later in the programme, and later tonight you can watch a BBC News special programme about the quake. It starts at 8:35 here on BBC One. And if you're away from the TV at any time, you can get live updates on our website, bbc.co.uk/Japan quake.
So yes, that gives you some idea of what I was going to be possibly walking into in relation to being in Japan and that sort of thing. So we'll just close this off here, and just having a look at some information here online. So the earthquake itself lasted for 6 minutes. It was a depth of 29 kilometers or 18 miles. And the total damage bill in the end, and this seems very understated for the damage that we've seen just in that news report alone, $360 billion US. So waves in the tsunami were up to 40.5 meters or 133 feet. There were 13,386 aftershocks, and the casualty toll, almost 20,000 dead, just over 6,000 injured, 2,500 people missing. So that's what I was walking into, going to Japan, something like 3 months after the tsunami. So let's cross to this website here. This is from Tokyo Walking on YouTube, and there's a whole range of walking tours that they record in 4K. So why don't we go for a walk and let's tell some good stories. So from time to time I may stop the recording to tell you about some things. Other times I'll just keep walking. We're near Napori, which is where I decided to base myself in Tokyo at the time. This footage from Tokyo Walking, I believe, was shot in 2024. Yeah, September 13, 2024, it was uploaded. Napori is, in Australian terms, basically a suburb of inner Tokyo. And just the scale of Japan when I first arrived was quite overwhelming when you think about the actual numbers. And so I'll get the population figures up for Japan. In 2023, the population of entire Japan was 124.5 million. For context, in Australia we're about 23-24 million at the moment in such a bigger area. So in Tokyo, the greater metropolitan area of Tokyo, there are 37 million people in what I think is basically the same sort of general area as the Sydney metropolitan area, where we might have 5 million people. There's 37 million people just in the Greater Tokyo metropolitan area. So with the sound of my mum's words ringing in my ears, I decided that I was still going to make the trip, on the promise that I wasn't going to go anywhere near Fukushima or Sendai. So I was going for 2 weeks, and it was my first time visiting an Asian country. As I mentioned earlier, 2009 I went to America, and in 2011 I went to Japan for 2 weeks. I caught a Qantas flight overnight from Sydney to Tokyo, arriving at something like 7 a.m. into one of the two main airports of Tokyo, in this case Narita. So it was an overnight flight. I managed to sleep a little bit, but I was worried about the inbound customs form which you had to fill in to say where you were going in Japan, how long you were staying for, etc. Now I'd actually made the bookings online, and I did some searching, and I thought that Nippori, which is basically the area that this is in now, was a good place. Now it wasn't in the centre of downtown Tokyo, but it was close enough, and I knew that the Japanese train system and transport system was fantastic, so I wouldn't have any dramas in that regard. Now this footage here from 2024 is way better than I would have been able to achieve in 2011. Anything that I would have shot in 2011 today would just look like I filmed it using a potato. So even though there's a lot of people who are living in Tokyo, here at least there doesn't seem to be that much congestion. I don't know exactly when this was recorded, what time of day, etc. But this was fairly typical of the environment that I'd see walking around Nippori. But first of all, I had to get to Nippori and I had to find it. But my first obstacle was Japanese customs, or what some people may call border security. They ask you to fill in the form to say where is your destination in Tokyo. Now I'd booked everything online. I had my accommodation at the one place for the entire 2 weeks, just basically from what I could see on the internet. Booked it, paid for. I didn't print an itinerary or receipts or anything to have proof of it, but I thought, well, worst case scenario, I've got everything online, I'll be able to produce it there. What I didn't take into account, that my phone battery would be flat by the time that I arrived from Sydney into Tokyo. So here's me after an overnight flight. I arrived at customs and I didn't fill in where I was staying because I didn't know exactly where I was staying. I hadn't committed it to memory. I didn't print out the itinerary or the receipt or a map or anything like that, just thinking that I'd be able to find it easily enough when I got to Japan, not thinking that I would actually have to tell them where I was staying. So we ended up having, myself and the border security agent, we ended up having a 15-minute discussion in the end relating to where was I staying, and me going backwards and forwards with him, me saying I've booked everything, I'm here for 2 weeks, my accommodation's already booked and paid for, but I can't show you because it's not on my phone and I didn't print it out. Sorry, it's on my phone, I didn't print it out, and my battery's dead on my phone. But if I could access the internet, I could show you. This went backwards and forwards for 15 minutes. He was saying, you have to tell me where you're staying. And I said, I don't remember where I'm staying, but I know that I've booked it. And he says, well, what city are you going into? And I says, I'm coming into Tokyo and I'm staying in Tokyo. He says to me, you must write down where you are staying. And I says, Tokyo. And he says, Tokyo is very big city, as I would find out for myself when I was allowed into the country. So after about 15 minutes of going backwards and forwards, in the end, to get out of the situation, because he probably figured that I was legitimate, and he's probably used to tourists, let's face it. All he said to me in the end was, on the card, you write down Tokyo City. So, okay, cool, Tokyo City. I wrote down. I went to the counter, got it checked off. I went and left the airport, got the train to the center of Tokyo. I knew that I had to get a train from Narita into downtown Tokyo, and then I would figure out from there where I was actually staying. Now, for all I know, I could be walking down this very street right here, staying in Napori. It was about 10-15 minutes from the main Tokyo station, and about a 10-15 minute walk from the station to my hotel. So I settled into the hotel and I went for a walk very similar to this walk here, and I explored Tokyo, mostly Tokyo. I did do a day trip down to Hiroshima on the Shinkansen, but a walk like this would have been one of my first walks in Japan after going to my hotel, putting my bags away, and then going to explore. And over the few days I would take a few different routes from my hotel to the train station. Now you'll notice, even though, as I mentioned, in Greater Tokyo there's 37 million people living in Greater Tokyo, you can see there's, in reality, that there's not a lot of people around. You can walk around, you can do whatever you need to do. You'll notice that the streets are very narrow, and for a country that's one of its backbone industries is producing cars, etc., you'll notice that there's not really a lot of cars on the street. Yes, there are cars. You'll notice a lot of smaller vehicles. We're just passing a Toyota there and a Mitsubishi van there. But one of the cars that I fell in love with was the Nissan Cube, and I've seen quite a few Nissan Cubes actually in Australia since. But you can just walk down the street quite easily, or ride your bike down the street quite easily. Parking, understandably, in Japan is, in this area of Japan, in Tokyo, at a premium. But this is fairly typical of the downtown sort of inner suburban areas, where there's just so many small alleys. 7-Eleven, there's a 7-Eleven coming up. 7-Eleven is more of a convenience store in Japan. There are some that have service stations, petrol stations, gas stations, call them what you will, attached to them, but there's a lot of standalone 7-Eleven shops in Japan. And at the time in 2011, one of the warnings that I'd actually read was that it can be difficult to obtain Japanese currency from an ATM, because a lot of the ATMs at the time weren't allowed to be used by non-Japanese people. You had to bank with a Japanese bank to get cash out of a lot of the ATMs. But the ones at 7-Eleven were usually pretty good. I believe that situation's changed a lot since 2011. But even when I went back in 2014, cash was king. That's obviously changed with the pandemic and everything, and technology getting better over time. But I did experience going to an ATM, knowing that there was money there to be had, but because I wasn't using a Japanese bank, the whole, get yourself some Japanese currency on a card that could be used in Japan wasn't as big. Drink vending machines absolutely everywhere. But 7-Eleven, a great place to get some cash out. Lawson, that's another convenience brand. I didn't see a lot of the Lawson brand around. I saw more Family Mart, but operating basically under the same principle as a 7-Eleven. There's a lot of people who, and I just couldn't imagine just walking down this street here in Australia and just leaving a scooter like that just parked there, and still expecting it, or even a bike, just to see the bike just left there. Lots of people riding bikes because of the narrow streets, or they walk to work, or they walk to the train station. Lots of different paths that you can see. Everyone's close to one another. Land's very valuable over there because of the high population, and there's a lot of areas that have more than one story. Lots of bikes, as we can see. This would probably be looks like more of a walking track now compared to driving down here, but you could probably still fit a very small car down here, I suppose, if you had to. But yeah, just another bike just sitting there. And what I found, we were talking about the Great Tsunami and Earthquake of 2011, 3 months prior to my visit. And of course I'd heard all the stories about how it affected Tokyo, and obviously how it affected Fukushima and Sendai more so. But in Tokyo itself, the major thing that I saw was a push for energy conservation, especially at the railway stations. It wasn't so much that there was a lot of obvious damage that I could see months later, but the main thing was energy conservation. So for instance, at a major train station, if they had a bank of, say, 8 escalators at an entrance, they'd close 6 of them down and put up a sign saying, due to the great earthquake and tsunami, we are trying to conserve power, because obviously one of the biggest energy producers, the Fukushima power plant, being destroyed. So there was a big push across all of Japan to conserve power. There are many documentaries on YouTube about the Japanese tsunami, the aftermath, the emergency response, the recovery missions, and also just how long it took for that area to be cleared, the different zones around Sendai and Fukushima. But as someone from Australia just walking around Tokyo 3 months after, there didn't seem to be many no-go areas in the centre of Tokyo, especially compared to some of that footage that we saw earlier in that news report. I was actually sitting in my hotel room in Nipori a few days into the trip. I didn't watch a lot of Japanese television. A lot of it I couldn't understand anyway because it was in Japanese, as you can imagine. But one day I was sitting in the hotel and I did feel the hotel shake from side to side, and it was a bit more violent than what I experienced the other day. But having said that, it was also nothing like we saw on the video at the start of this episode. So back then I was on Twitter. I haven't been there for ages. Don't have an account there. But one of the first things I did was to get on Twitter and Facebook and say, hey, was there an earthquake in Japan just now? And I soon had quick confirmation that there was. It was more considered an aftershock rather than an actual earthquake. And that's a pretty steep set of stairs to climb up there just quietly. Another thing that I noticed about Japan the time that I went over the Japanese summer, it was hot and it was humid and it was sweaty. Hear the cicadas there in the background, but yeah, it was so hot and sweaty. But I still got out every day and went for walks. Just walking around a place like this to get to the train station was fascinating enough, and then you get down to the shops and there was just so many different options, obviously, for what to buy. Now, over time, I've been known as a fussy eater, and I have improved in that regard in relation to meat products, especially. Like I have tried various meat from various countries primarily, but my mum and others were concerned that I wouldn't be able to find anything that I like to eat because I didn't eat Asian food or anything like that. Don't like particularly hot and spicy type things. But I thought, well, I know they've got McDonald's and KFC, etc. So I knew that I wouldn't starve. I certainly knew that.
It is.
So
I've seen film.
I did notice when I went to McDonald's for the first time, for instance, they had the menu board, but what they also did, they had a double-sided laminate placemat type menu that they would give you when you arrived at the counter. One side everything was in Japanese and the other side everything was in English. So they'd see me come and they'd flip it straight over to the English side because, you know, my knowledge of Japanese is very, very basic. And I did find that a lot of the time just pointing to things worked, and a bit of charades. Now I did learn that in Tokyo there's a lot of translation of signs, etc. I did learn that, and I also learned that the standard of English was good, but they wanted to make sure that if they interacted with me that their English was excellent and that they didn't stutter over words, possibly say the wrong word or whatever. But on that trip and on the second trip that I took in 2014, the further you went out of Tokyo, the English basically disappears. Now things may have changed, But if you're in one of the bigger touristy areas like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, etc., Hiroshima, even with no Japanese knowledge, you'll see signs, etc. You'll be able to survive, as we're walking through a cemetery at the moment. You'll be able to survive. If you do like Asian food, of course, you've got a lot to choose from. But one of the things, and we might actually see this during this video, is that at a restaurant, for instance, they'll have basically a life-size model in the window of what you're about to eat. So it gives you a visual representation of what you're about to eat. Now this one day, and there's a lot of motorbikes, mopeds and scooters around Japan too. I remember I wanted some Japanese chicken in this restaurant, and it was the middle of the day, so I was thinking, okay, it's probably going to be open, and I didn't see any signs that said to me, as someone who doesn't speak Japanese, that the place was closed. A lot of these places you have sliding doors that you open to get in, and the door was unlocked, so I opened it and I went to the counter, and the person behind the counter actually had to tell me in English that they were actually closed and that I should leave the restaurant because they were closed. Now they're obviously doing stuff in there as well, but in Australia, for instance, in a similar situation, if your restaurant's closed, even if you're in there working or whatever, and you're closed and you're not open to the public, you'd have the door locked, even if you're in there. So I left, and it was all good. But speaking of KFC's very big in Japan, and especially, surprisingly for my ears, when I found out, over Christmas is when KFC becomes really popular in Japan, and you actually have to order, if you want a large amount of chicken, say, to take home to your family, you have to actually order it in advance of Christmas Day. It's just a big time of year for chicken. The first time I went in 2011, it was pretty much as it looks now, in terms of blue skies, there's some cloud, it's hot. But the second time I went in 2014, it was actually winter, and it was snowing, and it was cold. But even so, everything still ran. There's a lot of places in the centre of Japan where you can go from one side of the street to the other using, underground passageways that are linked to shopping centres, etc. But yeah, it was a very, very different scenario, having gone from weather that looks like this the first time I was there to snow, which I hadn't seen a lot of. I'd seen some snow in the US, especially, but snow was basically there for all of my second trip to Japan. Japanese people, really, really nice, really friendly, helpful people. Can't really fault anyone on the Japanese railway system that I met. Very polite, very respectful, very willing to help you try and navigate, and the system is very complicated. If you've ever seen a network map of the central Tokyo area and all of the different lines that are there. It was the whole experience of being in Tokyo for the first time in 2011 really reminded of being in an anime, in a cartoon. Now at the moment it's very quiet, very relaxed, but when you walk down some streets, especially where the gambling dens are or the shopping centres, there's lots of noise, stimulation. But now we've come to a train station. This may be Nippori Station. But it was amazing the first time I was there, at any time of the day or night, just to see so many people on the trains, even 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was basically like peak, for what I would say is peak hour all day. Now that's a Yamamote line train, which is a main loop that runs around Tokyo. And you can just see the number of tracks that are there. The big wide rail corridor there, the amount of tracks that are there for the different destinations. There's different railway companies. On Tokyo Metro, for instance, all of the lines have got a line letter and the stations are numbered. So if you're on the M line and you get on at station 1, they have English and Japanese characters. So you might be able to figure out, oh okay, you're getting on at station M1 and then you need to go to station M20 and change there from the M line to the S line, for instance. And that line, you know, it might be S20 and then you might go up to have to get off at S49. And so you'll see on all the maps and all the stations, on Tokyo Metro at least, so you'll be able to figure, oh well, I'm at station S40, I have to get off at station S49, so I'm heading in the right direction and I'm 9 stops away. Pretty sure this is a Nissan Cube coming up. Oh no, that must be a longer wheelbase. It's more of a van than a Cube. I was actually debating for one of my cars to actually buy a Nissan Cube. They're very low to the ground though. Another thing that you'll notice is how clean everything is. Hardly any rubbish on the ground, any dirt that's out of place, any leaves that there's hardly any leaves that are, or branches on the footpath or anything like that. Graffiti and vandalism are basically non-existent. It's a very safe place. It's a very safe place to walk around. One thing that you'll notice is that it's quite easy just to walk around. You know, you could well be a little bit of a novelty as a Western person walking around some sections. Yeah, it might run it like that for a while. But we are walking through the Nippori area. This is a video by Tokyo Walking, and I believe there's a lot more sites like this as well, where they just go for walking tours. I think we're coming up to a Family Mart convenience store. Yes, we are coming up to a Family convenience store on the right hand side here. And they certainly peppered around the place. So after a couple of days of getting my bearings and just experiencing what it's like to walk around Tokyo, and there's various areas that you can go that are themed, like America Town, etc. I decided eventually to, and I've bought the train around many places. I decided to get a Shinkansen train, or what we in Australia commonly refer to as a bullet train. And I went to Hiroshima and back. And Hiroshima was bombed in World War II. Now there's also a lot of documentaries about the after effects, about what happened to the people of Hiroshima. But they've done a fantastic job of rebuilding the city. Of course, they recognise the past and what happened, etc. You know, and it was sad to think about what happened to the people there, but also the way that the rebuilt was rather nice. It was a good 2-3 hours, I want to say, on the Shinkansen, which they can go up to 250-300 kilometres an hour. I remember the first couple of times I went on one from Tokyo, and they don't necessarily go at that speed when they first leave Tokyo, and then all of a sudden 20 minutes later you're out in the rice fields, the rice paddies either side of the train, and then it really starts to speed up. But Hiroshima was my first port of call, because I just wanted somewhere that I'd heard something of Hiroshima, so I wanted to go down there and have a look. They've actually got a good, not that I spent a lot of time on it or anything like that, a good metro system and also a tram system as well down there. On my 2014 trip, I decided to go as far north as I can. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the time when I came back in 2014, it was winter and it was snowing. So the first few days I again hung around Tokyo, and it had been snowing for a few days at that point, and I had a big snow jacket that I had purchased several years ago, and I had gloves and everything like that, and I was fine. I wasn't like 100% comfortable, obviously, but I wasn't staying in my hotel room and going, oh well, I can't go outside, it's snowing. I thought I have to go out and experience things. One of the big things that I did experience was that Shinkansen ride when I did go north, and I wanted to see how far north I could actually go. This was before they'd actually completed the Shinkansen between the main island of Honshu and where Sapporo is in Hokkaido. So this one particular day it wasn't snowing in Tokyo, so I thought, well, I'm not going to need the big jacket. I still probably could have left it on in hindsight, but it wasn't as cold as the previous few days. But I'd also decided to see how far north I could head on the Shinkansen, and I purchased a ticket and I found that I could go to Aomori, which is about 900 kilometres north of Tokyo, and as far as I could go on the main island before the tunnel was built to Sapporo. So I knew that it was cold in Tokyo, but what I didn't realise and take into account, and it's easy in hindsight, is to think, well, if it's cold and been snowing in Tokyo in the last few days, I'm heading north, so it's only going to be probably colder and probably still snowing. But I didn't take that into account, and I didn't take my big jacket. So I've got to Omori, and according to one of the signs in the main street, it was 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit at the point of freezing. It was still snowing, but the feels like temperature was definitely under freezing. And here I am just wearing a basic jacket, and walking around the streets of Omori, 900 kilometres north of Tokyo. There's a police car. So I'm not sure where the public announcements are coming from that you can hear, and obviously I can't understand what they're saying, but there's not massive queues of traffic. You're not necessarily bumping into so we're in Central Street in Ipori. This is one of the reasons that I've decided to decrease the size of the screen, because I discovered that there's actually from time to time subtitles, so this would probably help. There's a huge variety of shops, another drink machine. There's lots of drink machines. So to travel 900 kilometers in Japan on a Shinkansen in something like 3 hours, that would take me close to 10 hours in Australia. So some traffic control, some construction going on. You see some signs in English, so you sort of, if you can't see what's out the front, you get some idea of what's in there, but a lot of shops have their items out the front, so you can see what sort of shop it is. Yet another vending machine. So here I am, 900 kilometres north of Tokyo, freezing my ass off, but it was still a great time. But I also did notice up there that the English was basically non-existent when it came to street signs in shops, etc. But it was an interesting experience nonetheless. One of many that I had in Japan the 2 times that I went there. I also remember on that 2014 trip in Tokyo, I went somewhere different than launching myself in Ipori, and I actually found that might actually be a police station with a flashing blue light there. I'm not sure. I didn't stay on it long enough for me to see. Many people may have heard of Shinjuku, which is the busiest railway station in the world. Now, I was actually staying above one of the entrances to Shinjuku, because they've got a couple of different railway operators that run into there, and Tokyo Metro being one of them. So in my hotel, I think I was pretty high up. I think I was about 10 stories up. So I'd go down to reception, and then I'd go down in basically the same building, down another set of escalators, and then I would actually be in the train station. So the hotel that I was staying in was basically above the train station. So that was quite convenient. But Shinjuku, very busy station. Now this doesn't look, in comparison, very busy at all. But Shinjuku, there's just so many platforms, so many different entrances, so many different ways that you can go. and there's lots of shops that are connected as well. So you really have to have your wits about you, but also know, okay, I need to be, let's say, the southern exit. So to get to my hotel, I have to find the southern exit. The signage on the Tokyo railway stations for people who don't speak Japanese but only speak and read English is actually pretty good. Even though they're basically a country with pretty much one culture, i.e. Japanese, monoculture I think they call that, compared to somewhere like Australia, multicultural. So there's a police car driving around with its blue lights on again. Their signage on the railway stations in Tokyo is pretty good, and you can navigate your way around, but obviously you need to pay attention and figure out where you're going. And with things like Google Maps having improved all the time, and I think at one stage on one of the trips I was just basically relying on whatever the signs said, and also the and any free Wi-Fi that I could get. But there's a whole heap of options now, especially with eSIMs being so popular. You can just order an eSIM and you can just, hook up with a Japanese phone company for the time that you're over there, or someone that's a provider that provides service into Japan, and you can just use your current phone, and it's no big deal. But with a big station like Shinjuku, it certainly helps. Excellent signage helps. Having Google Maps working really well to help you navigate which exit, for instance, you have to take. It can seem, even though this isn't busy, this is with the benefit of me having been to Japan a couple of times. Japanese people love trains. There's railway cafes, there's stories of some railway stations have their own cat as a mascot. I went to one Japanese railway museum south of Tokyo that had a massive turntable with a steam engine on it that was in light steam, and they had their driver and what, depending on the era, was either called fireman, observer, or second person or assistant driver, depending on your terminology. And they were in their railway uniforms and their white train driving gloves, and they were waving out of the window of the people, and the turntable was just continuously moving around slowly, so you could stay in the same spot, but you could see the whole engine that they had on this turntable, this very big steam engine. That was quite cool. Then there was the Japanese railway simulators that they had at this museum. Now this was the only railway museum that I went to in Japan, but I presume they've got others, not just this main one south of Tokyo, and they had about 4 or 5 different full-size simulators for the local trains, and they also had one for the Shinkansen. I'll always remember there was this young Japanese boy, he would have been about 3 or 4. Now he wasn't necessarily wearing the railway uniform, but he did have his own pair of white train driving gloves, which all the train drivers wear. Now the train drivers over there and the railway staff over there, they were dressed in a similar sort of standard to what an airline captain would, for instance. And the drivers would all have their white train driving gloves on, the immaculate uniforms, and they obviously take a lot of pride in their job. So there are many trains where you can actually see out the front and see the person driving the train. And what they will do when they're driving around is that every time that they see a green signal, they'll actually point at it, and so they're looking out the front window, one hand on the controls looking forward, and then when they see a signal they'll point forward towards the signal as if to say, I recognise you, you're a signal, you are clear and I can proceed. But with their white train driving gloves on, and it's a thing that they do so they don't make operational errors. That they will point to things. The station staff when a train's coming in and out of the platform, they have their procedure that they do, and they have to do it every time to make sure that they follow their routine. And this boy, as I said, he would have been 3 or 4, and here he is driving the simulator like an absolute demon. And there he is with his white train driver gloves on, looking out the window, and every signal that he would see, he would do that exact motion. Now, I don't know if he had family that were in the industry or not, but he would do exactly that at the age of 3 or 4. Point at the signal as if to say, I recognise you, you are a signal, you are clear, I can proceed. There were lots of different exhibits in the Railway Museum that I visited, including I think they call it the Class 0 or Shinkansen 0, I think it is. The very first one in 1964. There's various spots that you can just sit and watch the trains go by, and and online I was having a look as well. There's lots of different webcams that are set up, so if you want to see various things of Japanese life, some around Shinjuku, for instance. That Shinjuku is very, very busy compared to what we're seeing now, but this is fairly typical of a lot of the places that I walked around while I was walking to and from the station in 2011 before getting into downtown Tokyo. So certainly love Japan, love the people, love the train system. Didn't necessarily do a lot of the touristy things that people do. Just walking around just like this, experiencing daily life was more than enough for me, rather than doing all the touristy sort of things like going to Tokyo Disneyland and all that sort of stuff. I didn't see the need to do any of that. Would certainly love to go back. There's so many different railway lines to discover, and all the long distance trains aren't necessarily Shinkansens. And what I should do, I did mention it I think in the first episode, but I never got round. I never got around to actually mentioning it or showing it in the end, was the Japanese train simulator that I was using, and I should actually pull that up in a moment while we're talking all things Japan and just having a look. So at another time, I also might pull up one of the live webcams as well, just so we can have a look at and sort of see just the amount of trains that go through the inner Tokyo area. It's just amazing. Probably the most touristy thing that I did. I didn't go to an onsen. I didn't think of it. I did go to a traditional Japanese bathhouse though, which was quite an experience. I did go to some shrines, but a lot of the time I was just walking around places such as this, or the Nemanate railway line that I mentioned earlier, the Green Line. It's a great place if you want to go around and see lots of different places in and around Tokyo. I think that's a cube, or fairly similar to a Nissan Cube. That's how small they are, and you can see why in this sort of environment where the streets aren't very big. There's a 20 kilometre an hour speed limit on this particular street. I definitely want to go back. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but I certainly enjoyed it. Lots of funny. I did have on my second trip there was a couple of interesting snow experiences that I had. Just up from my hotel in Shinjuku was the Shinjuku fire station, and this one particular day had their fire engine out the front of the fire station, and it had been snowing, and so they got their shovels out, and they were shoveling. They were shoveling the snow out of the driveway of the fire station, and so I like fire engines and that sort of thing, and so I was taking a few photos of the men as they were shoveling the snow out of their driveway, and then who I presume was like the commanding officer of the fire station came up to me. And with my non-existent Japanese and probably his low level of English compared to mine, what he was trying to say was crystal clear to me in a moment of clarity, and it wasn't just you can take some photos of us, but please, if you want to, shovel some snow with us. So I thought that was really cool, and I was struggling with the cold. I was struggling with my phone battery actually having enough charge in it and keeping the charge so I can take the photo. I'll actually pause now and I'll find the photo that I had taken, which is still a fond memory. So here we are. This is a story. I was going through trying to find the particular photo that I was thinking about, and then I found this one. Now, I did mention in the first episode back from the hiatus that was 14 years. 11 years. 11 years. The official hiatus of Erk Pod ended. I mentioned in the first episode that we lost our friend Richard from the Wasting Time podcast, and I mentioned about the time that I went to Chicago, and I promised him that I would have Foster's on air. Now, I'd totally forgotten that he'd taken this photo until I was just going through my Facebook and just trying to find the photo that I was thinking of in relation to my story of the Shinjuku fireman. So there I am with the Fosters in my left hand, the I Have Issues t-shirt. This is from 2009 in Chicago. Near my left elbow, you can see the can of Fosters, and you can also see an Erk Pod coffee mug. And that photo there, because we didn't film a lot back in those days in 2009, that photo there really shows what I thought of drinking Fosters. And I'd totally forgotten about it. I think that I've even deleted my Flickr account, which had a lot more photos uploaded. But that there, our great mate Richard, who we lost a couple of weeks ago, that really summed up that particular appearance and what I thought of Foster's. I'd totally forgotten about it. But there it is. There it is. Wow, I've got a whole lot of photos from the American trip in 2009. I have to do some more searching. I thought that I was actually going to be able to more easily find the image there of myself and the firefighters at Shinjuku, but that wasn't the case there. I actually found that on Richard's Flickr account, which he still has. But I think I did see some other interesting photos. Oh, this one. Yeah, there's the Fosters there. Just looking to see if there's some more photos that I can actually share, because I think that was when I met PG Holyfield at Balticon. Okay. Myself and the voiceover guy. I'm not putting these ones on the screen at the moment, but it's a voiceover guy. Squeak. Myself and T. Morris. There we go, Balticon. Lots of different... What was I doing there? Oh, it was a birthday lunch that I was at. Don't know exactly what I was doing there. I'm wearing a Chicago Cubs t-shirt, and because... Hang on, Erk's birthday lunch. Oh, this is from Squeak's... all the iPhones in the middle of the table, and there's mine with trip view, etc. located in the old iPod. Quite an old familiar faces there. You know, Squeak and Drew and the voiceover guy, and so that was rather interesting. I just did a search for Erk Pod on Flickr to see what would come up. I think from memory they nicknamed PG Holyfield the busiest man in podcasting at one stage. I seem to remember. Now, I don't usually Google myself, but that might actually help in what I'm trying to the amount of photos that I found that I'll probably show on a future episode. Where do I have my Facebook window open? I might have to open a new window. Just having a look at some of the photos that I've actually got got over the years, I haven't posted as myself on Facebook for quite some time. And I'm just trying to find a different photo that I can put up as my the photo to replace the one on the screen at the moment. The other story that I can tell in relation, oh yes, I should get that one with the giant remote control. Although that was an old photo from Erk Pod, and I was wearing a shirt saying, "You look better on MySpace." Actually, I might. Although I'd have to be careful. There's a... Oh, the school reunion that took about 20 years to occur. Some faces that I recognise. Some that I don't. Some American photos there. At Firecom. Couple of different weddings. I should probably just go to an album I think that I know is a bit safer. Profile photos is probably a good place to start. So I might do that as something a little bit different. Just to see out the episode while I'm doing that. On the same trip in Shinjuku, I had a snowball fight with a group of salarymen who were... I don't want to log in. That's going to be inconvenient. I was in downtown Shinjuku and I was having just watching a couple of salarymen having a snowball fight. And so they threw a snowball at me and it got me in the face and it knocked my mobile phone out of my hand. That's how good of a shot they were. And then so they then invited me to go ahead and throw snowballs at them. So I did. That was good time had by all. I'm just scrolling through a few profile photos to see if I can see the photo that I was looking at a bit earlier. Different sporting photos and whatnot. The time I won a hockey championship. Cricket commentary. Oh yes, the photo of me doing ice hockey commentary, a final series for the first time in the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League. I should put that one on the screen now. What one did I have? That one. So I'll just change that image. The stuff that I could do now that I could never do in the original Erk Pod days. Here we go. We'll expand this. So this is me 2016, 2017. And thankfully for me, I had the phone plugged into an outlet so I wouldn't lose charge. So I'm actually commentating on a women's ice hockey game in 2016-2017 season that the Sydney Sirens, the jersey that I'm wearing. Back then when I wore jerseys of the teams that I was broadcasting for, rather than being more neutral these days. So I'm doing commentary, no microphone or anything, and just going from side to side with the iPhoners. So I've got sort of one eye on what I'm watching on the play and trying to line it up with what's on the screen at the same time. So that was a nice shot that that my friend Ellie took of me from that particular angle. That was at the Canterbury Ice Rink in Sydney, that's currently undergoing a massive renovation. Can do that one. This is really on the fly, seat of my pants, live production. No, it helps if I actually save the file before I try and get it onto screen. Now this is me walking down Hindley Street in Adelaide when I was doing social media for the Sydney Bears ice hockey team. And I'm wearing a Sydney Bears jersey there. And I was just walking along Hindley Street in the middle of the day, so it's not even night time. And there were these couple of promo bears for one of the local pubs just walking around. And for some reason, old mate on my right decided that for some reason he needed to cover up the hockey stick that's on the old Bears logo there. So that was an interesting one. I didn't know that they were going to do that until I actually got the photo back. And then, of course, speaking of bears, one of the times I was a wrangler of Sid the Bear, the mascot of the Sydney Bears, and I was his wrangler at one stage. Actually had a go of the couple of the different mascot outfits, the heads. But this is me with Sid the Bear at Sydney Ice Arena in Baulkham Hills in 2014. Sydney Ice Arena is no longer there. The site of that is now a block of apartments in Baulkham Hills in northwestern Sydney. So it's a shame. Apart from the fact that they didn't have any glass at Baulkham Hills, it was actually quite a nice arena with a lot of seats, etc. Let's see, what else can I find? I did find that some video that I shot, not very good by today's standards, but it was certainly. I did see. Maybe that was in a separate album, but I did see a rather nice photo of. This is when I'll pull this one up. This is when I was in Hungary. And the only reason that I went to Hungary was because I found a place in Hungary that was called Erk. So, me being me, I had to go there and take my photo in front of the sign that says Erk. A very small farming village about an hour out of Budapest in Hungary. That was from 2011. A similar sort of photo, but one that was taken in Germany. Not just Erk, but this is a place called Erkner in Berlin. I need to drastically reduce the size of that photo. And this is on the fly. There's the station sign. Because it's not a usual name. There we go. So I found, and that was, I had no idea that was there. I was just going around the system, and I found Erkner. So that was quite cool. I quite enjoyed that. There were a couple of, maybe it's in a different album. Or maybe it was this one. Oh yes, this one is an interesting one. So it wasn't the one that I was thinking of next, but it will do. I remember sometimes I'd go out and I'd actually record something on the road, so to speak. And this one was from 2008. Need to expand that photo. And I believe this may have been on the central coast of New South Wales. And I did do my own merchandise back then. And I've got my microphone and my ice cube and my earphones in. My skill in the shirt wearing department has certainly improved a lot. But I'm outside and I'm recording. That's when the show was hosted by Pod Show. So yeah, that was June 2008. I posted that one. So that was a very simple design of the Erk Pod logo as it was, and the microphone cube, which I may still have somewhere. But compare that 2008 to this Newcastle Sticker Collective shirt of the episode. Use discount code ERKPOD10 for 10% off any purchase from the NTL Sticker Collective collection. And the one that I'm wearing on this episode, the Get Your Hands Off My Succulent Chinese Meal. ntlstickercollective.com.au/democracy manifest. Use discount code ERKPOD10 for 10% off any purchase. And this wasn't a pre-planned segue, but it worked out really well when I saw 2024, 2025 merchandise compared to, is that Web3? Compared to that in 2008. And technology and the use of templates and my skills in even computers has improved a lot since then. Use discount code ERKPOD10 for 10% off any purchase. ntlstickercollective.com.au/democracy manifest. Let's see what other photos can I find here, because there was one particular photo that I did see. This one was during a Erk Pod round table. Where are we? Get on the right screen will help. Again with the Erk Pod merchandise that it was mainly me buying, but other people have actually been buying my Democracy Manifest merchandise, which has been awesome. ERKPOD10 for that discount. And this was all audio back then. Let me see, what else can I find? Oh, that electronic sign. I still have that, and that's the shirt that I was wearing in Chicago. Definitely pull this one up. Walk down memory lane. I'll just adjust it like that for the moment. I still have that electronic sign. I don't know if it still works, but I still have that electronic sign. Oh, this is the MySpace photo. This is the MySpace one, so I'll definitely put that one up. Back when I think I might have even just been getting into Facebook around about that time, mainly for the show. You look better on MySpace. I'm pretty sure that was during a Erk Pod Roundtable episodes as well. Oh, my edition of Expert Podcasting for Dummies. So many downloads that I've just done for the benefit of this episode. Certainly unplanned, but when I was just flicking through trying to find the Shinjuku Fireman, Expert Podcasting for Dummies, written by Evo Terra and T. Morris. Is that the end of that album? Okay. That's the end of the Profile Pictures album. I want to find the other one that I saw with Shauno and Jen, just to finish things up here. Cover photos. What have I got for cover photos? Probably not what I'm... Oh, I must see if I can get this. I think I've still got the DVD for this one. When I went to America and I did the CNN studio tour, and you can have a go at being on the news in CNN and reading the teleprompter, etc. I'm going to have to reduce the size of that too. But I've got the, I'm pretty sure I've still got the DVD of that. So there we go, the time that I was on CNN. Well, sort of. Just trying to find the photo that I saw earlier with... probably won't find it in cover photos. Because I know where I saw it, I just have to see it again so I figured out how to put it on the screen. It was one, because back in those days, like, photos came out reasonably well, but the video standard wasn't there compared to what it is now. I'll find it eventually. Sort of going in order here. Oh, this will be close. That's the In-N-Out Burger. The Super 8 that I stayed in LA. Panda Express in... I think that's in San Francisco. First time I found a KFC in America. And on one side of the box it had Kentucky Grilled Chicken. On the other side, Kentucky Fried Chicken. One of the many times that I went to Hooters. The no cruising sign. So this must be close. Oh, San Luis Obispo. There's one of the photos. That's with Jen. Oh, the Bubblegum Alley one. That's even better. We were trying to figure out Bubblegum Alley in San Luis Obispo. My old mate Sean and Jen, hey guys. Might have to give you a bit of a heads up to listen to this one. But we're in Bubblegum Alley. It's a very narrow corridor. And we're trying to find a way to get us all in the shot with the bubblegum that people stick on the wall. So Jen in front and myself and Shauno in the back. I'm trying to see if there's one where we're both at the Panda Express. or if I'm going to have to use two different shots. Might have to use two different shots, but I did see... Oh, gas prices in America. I uploaded this in 2010, but from 2009, at a 7-Eleven in California, for a gallon of regular unleaded gasoline, as it says on the sign, $2.45 a gallon for regular, $2.55 for mid-grade, and $2.65 for premium. I think I've gone backwards too far. I think I went away from Panda Express. Oh, that sign spun me out when I first saw it too. San Luis Obispo, next 10 exits. Coming off the... Yeah, I'll do it this way. So there we go. There's myself and Jen at Panda Express. Is Panda Express still a thing? I'll have to look that up in a minute. Oh, yep, there we go. And I'll grab the one with myself and Shauno. I know Albert will be quite enjoying this flashback into Erk Pod memory lane. Let's see, what else can I find here while I'm here and I'm on? Oh, we went to Evo's. Oh, the Nav man. The ghetto Nav man. Let me see, what else can I find here quite quickly. Oh, this could be another American episode. I'll probably do it at some stage when I'm a bit more organised. The Jesus Christ Trucking Company truck that I was passing, heading up from San Luis Obispo to San Francisco. It was quite amusing. But just to finish it off, I'll see if I can find... That's album 1. How many albums, because it could only have a certain number of photos per album, so I had to split it up from memory. Yeah, it's a nice look down memory lane. It's unfortunate that video isn't what it is now, because the amount of things that I did shoot, or that I do shoot now, compared to then, but what I shot so many photos, and the photos were pretty good quality compared to the video quality, compared to the photo quality of the time, is so different. I'm just looking through some profile photos to see if I can find... Oh, pod crawl in the UK, that could be another totally different episode of going to the UK. One particular station that I was at in the UK, the sign says, "It is quicker to wait for the lifts that run every few minutes. Do not use the stairs except in an emergency. This station is 15 floors below ground." Oh, the time... Oh yeah, that's the time. I'll save that one. That was the time where I was the minder for Sid the Bear. because we always tried to have a minder with the mascot because of, people being around and that sort of stuff. There was one summer event that we were at in Penrith when it was really, really hot, and we had to be really careful with Sid because otherwise he'd overheat. There's Sid the bear. And then this one here was the first time that I actually tried on a hockey jersey. I had no idea what size, etc. to get. So I met up with this guy on screen, Luke Reid, on the left-hand side. He was a goaltender for the Sydney Bears at the time. The jersey that I'm wearing was what he was wearing on the ice. The game had just finished. We'd had a chat, and because I wanted to know about sizing and what size I would need. So you can see there in the photo, he's a pretty skinny guy compared to me. So he's basically my size with goalie gear under that jersey, where he's a lot skinnier than I am. But that was the first time I ever wore a hockey jersey. That was in 2014 at Sydney Ice Arena. Let me see, what else can I find? Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. That was when I was at CNN, and I met up with my old mate Captain Jeff from the Airline Pilot Guy podcast, and because of that, we thought, considering we were at the CNN Towers or CNN Center in Atlanta where he lives, and that he's the host of a show about planes, we thought that we'd both do we'd both look like planes at CNN. Captain Jeff's now retired. He's been retired for a couple of years from his airline now. He can actually say that he worked for Delta Airlines now that he doesn't actually work there anymore. But was that 2014? Yeah, 2014. We got the train together downtown, and we went to a revolving bar above the city, and we were actually going to watch that year's Super Bowl together. We were going to watch that year's Super Bowl together, but he got a last-minute overtime shift. They called him up and said, "You want to do a overtime shift?" Now, with a airline pilot's job, you don't necessarily just do the 1 day overtime. You might get a whole trip, so it might be worth 3 days overtime. And I says, "Mate, as much as I want to hang out at Hooters with you and watch the Super Bowl," which I ended up doing by myself and whoever else was at the bar, I don't want to miss. I want to see you miss out on 3 days of overtime on a long trip. So you go right ahead, mate, and do the trip. Oh yes, speaking of memories, I may or may not have mentioned it on the Welcome Back episode, but because there have been some episodes that I have recorded that I haven't put online yet. Erk, this was 2012. So for my birthday, I got a whole group of bands together, and in the spirit of Waynestock in Wayne's World 2, I decided to put on my own show, and I called it Erk at the Valve Bar in Sydney, and I had a few of my favourite bands there, a couple of last minute no-shows, but it was absolutely fantastic. So Erk was the one and only gig that I actually put on myself. Did have some help, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. Oh, there's the. I'll save that too. That's the photo on the poster came from. So Smoke and Mirrors had a megaphone, so I asked to borrow it, and that turned into a nice announcement. If I had to make an announcement, that would be the photo that I'd use to make said announcement. So we're going back. So I'm in the heavy metal stage of my Facebook photos. Where are we? I could do this all afternoon. I'm not going to. But it's certainly bringing back some... Oh, VMX, Very Metal Christmas. Some faces that I haven't seen for quite some time. Oh, now we're at Podcrawl. Let's not get started. Let's not get started with Podcrawl and dressing up as a vampire. The big heavy metal boots that I had there at one stage. But there was it's been so many memories. Some of this stuff, if I look deep back in my computer, I've probably got some video, but knowing what other videos that I've seen, they may not be broadcast quality, so I won't necessarily go there and... Oh, that was a wicked masquerade party that should stay at the... What happens at the New Year's Eve masquerade party stays at the New Year's Eve masquerade party. But I hope you have enjoyed... I'll probably end on this photo, actually. Although I did say... that I was going to find the... This is the last photo that I'll put up. Story time. I like story time, as you can tell. Myself and Emma Dean, who is a cabaret performer, best describe her as. And this was in my phase of dressing up as a vampire, and as going to these sort of shows, this is the sort of outfit that I'd wear. Very, very talented. This was an album launch of one of her new albums at the time, and that was quite cool. All right. What's that cliche that some people do, some vloggers do, when they have to edit something and insert it into a video later? So this is editing Erk, and I found the particular photo that I was looking for. It turns out that I wasn't looking at all of my Facebook photos. I was only looking at the ones where I was tagged in, so I didn't see the photo. This is the photo that I was looking at, and I was trying to find myself and the firefighters at Shinjuku Fire Station. Back to the show. To finish things off and to get back onto the subject of Japan, I really have enjoyed bringing you this episode. The American episode that I want to do at some stage like this will be fun. Also about the time that I walked to China, so I could combine Hong Kong, Macau and China in that one, and a very similar sort of issue. This is JR East Train Simulator. This simulator is actually used by real Japanese train drivers for JR East, and they've also released it to the general public so they can purchase and they can play along as well. Unlike any other train simulator that I've seen, this one is actually photorealistic. This is from my simulated Erk playlist of the simulator. Hang on, I need to. This is the only view that you get when you're on the simulator. Out the front, as it should be. Various different train lines that you can drive over. All of the announcements are in Japanese. You can follow along and play along in English. Quite okay. But the only time that you see another train is when you see it out of the front window. Not like these shots. On Japan's JR East Train Simulator, there is one view out the front of the train only. So that is a look at JR East Train Simulator, simulator.gaming.com. If you'd like to see what I'm doing on the simulator side of things. Anywho, I have been Eric Brook. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. And don't forget to subscribe, do all that sort of stuff. Hopefully by now you'll be able to get this show as an audio podcast as well as the video. I think the video, now that video is the way that it is and that I can operate video the way that I can operate it compared to the original audio Erk Pod, video wouldn't have worked the same as it does now. But I know that I've increased my skills a lot during that time with video production and live production as well. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. See you next time on Erk Pod, where it's all Erk all the time. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta and farewell. Does that mean I have to say story time by Erk Pod about Japan and other random events that he's remembered about on Facebook? Bye for now.